always been a healer then. Your nature is healing then. This is where I'm digging. I'm digging into.
Yes, I am a I am a nurturer healer. As a kid, everything was my pet. Anything that crossed my path, I took in. Worms, insects, frogs, turtles, rabbits, anything. My poor mother had such a menagerie, it wasn't even funny.
Welcome, Lenore Myers, attorney Lenore Myers. Welcome to the story and this interview all about you and the work that you do and why you do it.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah.
As always.
So I'm delighted that you're joining me today. And I want to talk about a few things that I think are really going to help people who are listening, who are contemplating divorce, who are still in the midst of divorce, and possibly those who are coming out of divorce. Tell us what you do and why you do what you do.
I am a family law mediator and attorney, and I help people transition through this painful life experience in the most peaceful, beneficial way for all the people involved in the family, spouses, children. And I do it because I have seen in my 35 years of practice how painful this process is for people. And I started practicing family law in 1988. And I think I had only been practicing in it maybe 3 or 4 years, and just saw how brutal the court system was for people to go through. And I remember somebody at a Pennsylvania Bar Association family law meeting standing up and saying, I am a reformed custody litigator. And I thought, I want to be that when I grow up. And that started me going and looking for a better way to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem as people go through this. And so I became a certified mediator back in 1993 when nobody was doing mediation. I had to travel to Maryland and spend a week down there to get my certification. And I tried to engage people in mediation back then, but there wasn't a lot of information out there, and people really weren't interested in it. And the way I was initially trained, I felt was not protective enough and inclusive enough. So I just kind of did my own thing throughout the years. And then I had the opportunity to become a custody conciliator in Montgomery County. And that was my dream job because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to try and help people resolve these custody cases in a peaceful manner. And so that I started to expand. And then I met Chris and Sharon from Mainline Family Law Center. And they finally were people that understood mediation in the way I did. And so that really launched me into doing mediation more full time than I had been.
All right.
And I look at myself as a peacemaker.
And that energy absolutely comes out of you every time that I am with you and in your presence. Let me just get some clarity on a few terms, okay?
Sure.
Introduce yourself as an attorney mediator. Why do you say attorney mediator instead of just saying mediator or just saying attorney?
Because a lot of mediators are not attorneys, and a lot of attorneys aren't mediators, and that the reason I'd say it that way is because I have, as a mediator, the unique understanding of what the law is, and I can help prepare in my mediation process legal documents for parties, not as their representative, but as a neutral third party attorney. Why do I say a mediator in addition with attorneys? Because most times attorneys are considered to be litigators. They like to go in court and fight. That's not what I do. I try and help parties come to a compromise. And I am not in my role as a mediator, I'm not representing either party legally. I am just a facilitator to the conversation for the two of them to help them come up with a solution that works best for their family, not necessarily something that's dictated to them by the court, or it's something that they can actively create to work for their family. Because in the court, they're always trying to put square pegs into round holes. And that just generally doesn't suit a family. And again, this is painful enough as it is. So it doesn't make sense to put people in a more pressure-filled meat grinder kind of situation that just exacerbates what's already going on between them, that painful separation.
Okay, so let me back up for a second, because I can hear questions rolling around in my mind from my invisible audience saying, wait a minute, but if I'm going to get a divorce, I'm going to fight. That is the point of divorce. It is to fight for what you believe is yours, to fight for how you've been hurt, to fight for your children. Why would I ever want a mediator when my job here, my role here is fight?
It doesn't have to be a fight, and it shouldn't be a fight, because especially when there's children involved, you're always going to be a family. You're always going to have to cooperate. Your children need you and your spouse to be a foundation under them. And if you go into court to fight to win, you're basically taking a jackhammer to your children's foundation. And even if there aren't children involved, you and your spouse have built something together. And you know that it means something to the two of you. You can't say that you didn't go into a marriage without loving that other person, without wanting to create something with that other person. And despite all of its flaws, do you really want to take a jackhammer to it? Do you really want to just destroy what you two have built together? Or do you want to look at it as, I want to share with my spouse what we've built together? I mean, if you're in a desert and there's a pitcher of water and there's two people, do you want to pour the water and believe that there's enough for each of you? Or do you want to take all the water and watch the other person, be dying of thirst? I think people actually are not that cruel. They actually love that person, and they really don't want to keep fighting. They just want peace. They want to go their separate ways, and they want peace.
So then what you're saying is interesting, because honestly, there are people who want that bucket of water to just be theirs, and they want to drink it in front of their thirsty ex, or ex soon to be ex, while he or she suffers in the dry heat. That is the reality. But I hear something different that you're saying. You said, well, people aren't really that cruel. So does that mean that mediation has the potential to bring out the best in people?
Most definitely. That's where people can find their better angels. And you're right. There are some people that just want to hurt the other person.
Yes.
They do. And so there are litigators for them, and they can go into the court. But I don't think in the end, after it's all said and done, that people that do that actually are satisfied. I think, that doesn't heal the wound. It and they feel actually a lot of times wounded more because they feel now that because they didn't get satisfaction that they were looking for emotionally, they feel wounded by their attorney because their attorneys cost them so much money. They feel wounded by the courts because the courts didn't see their side. And they feel, re-wounded by their spouse because their spouse got another one over on them. So it's, again, some people just want to fight. And okay, the courts are there for them.
So
But I think the majority of people are looking for an alternative and they don't know anything other to do than, get an attorney. And they have their family that's very protective of them and saying, you got to get a lawyer and take them for everything that they have because they've hurt you. Well, that's not just because, people hurting doesn't actually help anybody heal. And I think people genuinely want to heal.
Yeah.
They just don't know how.
Yes, I hear you. Describe for us the emotional, financial, spiritual, and relational costs to fighting, and then we'll go into talking about peace. But let's just deal a little bit more with the cost of fight.
It's enormous. I mean, first, monetarily, attorneys are expensive, and there's a lot of hurry up and wait in the court system. So you're paying your attorney several $100s an hour, sometimes just to sit for hours waiting to talk to the judge for 15 minutes, half hour to make the argument. And it's much more expensive to finance two households than one. So you as spouses are taking your limited resources and you're spending a lot of money, basically handing over the keys to your kingdom to a stranger in a black robe. And the family law is not a definite science. It's not predictable. There's general parameters that the courts have to follow, and but each county, each judge, they interpret it all a little different, and you don't know what you're going to get that day. So you're really handing over control. So emotionally and mentally, you're already feeling like your world's imploding. Everything's falling apart. You're losing control, and you're further handing over control to complete strangers. So emotionally, it's so taxing, and you really don't understand what's going on because there's lawyers and judges speaking this language that you don't understand. It sometimes feels like it defies logic. Like, why would a judge decide that? Also, it's because you feel you're right and they're wrong, but a third party doesn't necessarily see things the way you do.
And isn't it
and so it's really taxing on a person. It's a real traumatic experience, 360 degrees.
And the third party doesn't really care that much. I'm talking about like in the court's sense. The judge doesn't really care that much about your outcome as you care about your outcome. The judge may not have that kind of compassion for your side as you would hope he or she would have.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that the judges really take it seriously that they want to do right by the family, but they never have the whole picture in the way you see it. Okay. And you think your situation is unique, and they've heard it 1,000 times. So they've already kind of made a decision based on your set of facts just at the outset, just the basic facts. And so it's and also, you've asked them to solve your problem.
Mm.
So, either you give them control or you go figure it out yourselves. And that's kind of the attitude that they take. Listen, you've come here with your issue and you want me to resolve it. So let me resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like they're cold, but honestly, they're not as much as you would think. And obviously every judge comes to the bench every day with a certain outlook
Mm.
based on past experiences, based on what their morning was, based on their past experience, even with your attorney. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's really just it's the system that you're stepping into, and it is kind of cold, but the judges are not as cold as you would think, unless they rule in on your favor, and then you think they're wonderful.
You said you gave a word that I think is really important here. I think you said this word. It's unpredictable.
It
There's
is.
so many variables involved in what you just described in terms of the court system. You've got the judge, you've got your attorney, you've got your spouse's attorney, and you've got the relationship with the attorneys to the judge's issues that morning. There's just so many different parts to this that you can't, like you said, it's not a science. You can't say for certain this will be the outcome. This is why mediation makes sense then. It makes sense because you reduce the variables involved in your situation and you get to take the front seat.
Exactly. It's predictable because the two of you make your decisions. You decide together what's going to work best for your family. And the two of you are not necessarily going to see things the same way, but a mediator is skilled enough to be able to help the two of you work through your issues to come back to center, which is what's going to work best for everybody. There's something called the game theory. It's the Nash equilibrium is the scientific theory, and it's based on the scientist from A Beautiful Mind created it, and there actually are there's a family attorney and a psychologist that have written a book about game theory. And in short, what it is if you choose the alternative that benefits everybody, then you get the most benefit. If you choose something that only benefits you or will only benefit the other person or a third person, you lose out on the overall best result for everybody. And that genuinely gives the most, gets the most out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what mediation is really about. Everybody looking at what's going to benefit the whole, because that overall is ultimately the best result to shoot for. My website, Divorce Done Differently PA, I have articles referencing that.
I want to dig a little bit more into you for a second. You said that there was a reformed custody litigator that you met, and you said, "I want to do what you're doing." Did I get that right?
Yes. Well, she just stood up in the audience and said, "I'm a reformed custody litigator." And a bell went off in my head, and I said, "That's who I want to be when I grow up." Mm-hmm. I don't want to
litigate. What's so bad about litigating? Like, is there a particular story that you can tell us where you came to the realization, in addition to the woman standing up, but you came to a realization that litigating is not what I want to do anymore?
I think I came to it early on in custody cases, because, and that's especially when she said that about the custody litigator in court, in custody litigation. It's each parent taking an arm and pulling. It rips the children apart. I remember being in chambers with judges questioning these little kids about, what's it like to be with mommy? What's it like to be with daddy? How stressful is that? It's traumatizing enough for a child's universe to have been imploded when his or her parents separate households. It's traumatizing enough that they have to go back between two houses. And then to feel that to love either one of those parents, you're betraying the other parent, because that's really the feeling that they get when they're in court.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so brutal. It's so brutal. And here, the parents they don't trust one another as it is right at that moment. And then to be in a situation that just breeds distrust, which is, the courts, because you're attacking one another. It's just heartbreaking. And that's why I always wanted to be the custody conciliator, because I just wanted parents to understand there's another way to do this and how important it is, because children are building blocks of our society. And if you're showing children that the way to interact with another person is to fight and to knock them down and to badmouth them, that other person who is half of your DNA, what does that do for the child? First of all, it makes them feel bad about themselves. It makes them feel insecure, because the relationships that they're relying on for basically their survival, they can't really trust it's going to be there, because it's already been imploded. And then, what framework do they have going forward to create relationships with anybody else in their world?
Mm-hmm.
They have this set of dysfunctional relationship tools that plays out in every scenario in their life going forward. So and this has been a gradual realization for me over the impact that this has, not just on families, but on society in general.
Yeah.
And so I just knew there was a better way. And I think I went into law to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel that what I was doing in family law was helping people in the way that I best could.
So the mistake that parents make is the idea that their children will go through this and that they'll just be fine. Oh, sure, their children are resilient, so this is really not going to affect them the way that I'm being affected or the father is being affected. This is not true.
Not at all. And I have to say, as a conciliator, I'm telling them that all the time. I love when a parent will say to me in conciliation, "This isn't fair." And my steam comes out of my ears. I'm like, this isn't fair. Nothing about this is fair, mostly for your child,
Mm-hmm.
because your child does all the work here. You two are sitting fat and happy in your house, and your kid is the one schlepping back and forth. And even on their best day, they couldn't do that. But their kid does it because they love them and they need them and they want to be with them. And the parents have to understand that it's their job to make it easier on the child.
Mm-hmm.
So, and getting back to relationships, what I then chide them, I say, you didn't do your work. Look back on your family history. This shouldn't surprise you why you picked one another and why you're here. And had you done some more personal work, maybe the child's universe wouldn't have imploded. But at least going forward, you're still obligated to show the child what a healthy relationship looks like, because all of their friends, their family, their coworkers, their teachers, their employers, their relationships with, classmates, employees, romantic interests, and their relationship with their parents is going to be based on what they see their parents doing with one another, because you can't do what you don't know. And then my other thing is, I say, family history, there's always toxicity, and it's like an avalanche. It builds up. And if you don't get out of the way, somebody gets buried.
Mm-hmm.
It might be your kid, might be your great grandchild or your grandchild. But at some point, somebody will be buried by that toxicity. And so you need to figure out a way to change things. And you only have to turn the stream a little to change the course of a river. But most people are dealing with toothpicks and teaspoons to do that. And they need pickaxes and shovels to do that deep work. And that really comes from individual and family counseling. And that's where people should really be putting their money instead of litigating.
You have a lot of passion. I mean, it's palpable. I can feel in my body, actually, in my intuitive self, the passion. Where else is this passion coming from?
I got into law to help people, to heal people. And so I feel that what I do is trying to heal people. I feel that I'm trying to plant seeds that later will, bloom and grow into big, strong trees and change, just change the course of certain family histories in a way that is going to make all the difference in the world.
So you've always been a healer then? Your nature is healing then. This is where I'm digging. I'm digging into...
I am a I am a nurturer healer. As a kid, everything was my pet. Anything that crossed my path, I took in. Worms, insects, frogs, turtles, rabbits, anything. My poor mother had such a menagerie, it wasn't even funny. But yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah.
I have to have something to nurture.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the couple that comes to you. How do you engage the couple?
Well, the initial consultation is, both parties come in, and the first thing I say is, I congratulate them on deciding to investigate this option during this really painful process.
Okay, wait, hold on 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they don't have to come in the same car, okay? They don't have to come in together in the same car. Everybody needs to be clear. You don't have to come in together in the same car. You can drive your car, he can drive his car, you just arrive at the same place on time, right?
Exactly. And it's funny because sometimes when I'm leaving my office and they've come in separate cars, they are outside talking together. But most times they come in separate cars. They do.
Okay, go ahead.
So, but yeah, it's painful. I mean, they can't even ride in the same car with one another. So that's why I congratulate them that, your first instinct is to be defensive and want to fight because you're hurt.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive in some respects to try and come in to, discuss mediation where you're going to try and be fair and reasonable with one another. So I start out by saying that, and then I explain to them that, mediation is a process where the two of you come to a decision about what's going to work best for your family. It's not going to be dictated by anybody, not the courts, not lawyers, not anybody, but the two of you. And my job as the mediator is to facilitate that discussion. I'm there to hold your hand and walk you through the process every step of the way to help you gather all the information that you need to create a settlement for the two of you and your family that's going to work best for you. And, it can't be a process where it's my way or the highway. It has to be a process where people are coming in open-minded and wanting to compromise on what is going to work best for their family. So it's really, I make it very clear to them that, this is what they're signing up for. And I also talk to them to make sure they're suited for it. Sometimes people just aren't in that place where they are able to peacefully reach agreements. And I might say, you might want to consult with an attorney to see what your other options are. They might consider collaborative law, which is another avenue that I'm trained in, where it's representation without litigation, where there are actually lawyers involved that actually are the ones sort of stepping into the peaceful place that their clients can't, to come to a resolution that's going to work for everybody. So I kind of feel them out to see where they are emotionally, to see if they're ready to move forward with a mediation process, and then explain to them what the mediation process is from my standpoint in terms of what I utilize.
Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of pre-work that's necessary for that couple to get ready to go through this process of mediation.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And so you take them through you facilitate the conversation, and ultimately what happens?
So ultimately, there's several sessions that we have. The parties have to, gather all their financial documentation. I generally have 2 financial mediation sessions with them. The first basically lays out the pieces of the puzzle. We talk about what the assets are, what the debts are, what the incomes are, and just kind of just lay things out. And then generally talk about, well, how would we maybe divide assets and debts? What might be an appropriate support amount? We'll go through the guidelines, but I also have the parties create individual budgets so they can see what they need to survive in separate households for them and their children. And I tell them, in terms of the support guidelines, it's the legislature in their infinite wisdom have said, this is what you need to survive with these incomes. But some people will look at that and go, oh my God, I could never make it on that. And other people look at it and go, oh, I don't need that much money. Mm-hmm. So, it's a guideline. If you were in the court system, that's what you would get. But in mediation, you can figure out what would work best for you and your family. And so those are 2 sessions. The second session, we kind of pull things together. We kind of figure out, well, what looks like might be a reasonable settlement here. And generally map out what the terms and conditions are. Parties go offline, kind of talk. We might have to have some more discussions back and forth. They'll finalize those terms and conditions, and then I'll create what's called a marital settlement agreement, which will incorporate all those terms and conditions, which will help then be processed through the divorce. And if there's children involved, the first mediation session is going to be about how they're going to share their parenting time. Mm-hmm. Because when children are involved, that's the cornerstone. We're going to build everything around how they are structuring parenting of their children. Mm-hmm. So, how can we financially support that parenting schedule? Whatever it needs financially, how are we going to do that? So we start with that if there's children.
So is mediation typically shorter in time frame than litigation?
Much. In Pennsylvania, there is a 90-day waiting period, and we don't start processing the divorce until after we reach the settlement because we want to keep the litigation out of it. But a mediation process, it takes about 3 months. It could be less time too. Depends on, the size of the estate, how motivated the people are, whether or not they've agreed on a lot of things. So the time frame is somewhere between overall from start of mediation till final divorce, 6 to 9 months. I have had cases in litigation for 5 years. So,
And and the couple is paying for that time of that 5 years.
oh
So
yeah,
yeah, so the couple needs to understand that it may take 5 years, but you're paying out of the wazoo for that lengthy litigation process.
oh definitely, and even with the most straightforward divorce where you get a lawyer, it's going to cost each of you $5,000 easily. And, a mediation is, a third less than that.
Yeah. And you said $5,000 to retain the lawyer?
Yes.
Okay. But that's not where it ends though, right?
Generally not.
At $5,000 people. You're starting at $5,000 and it can go up and up and up.
Oh yeah, easily. I mean, just a mildly litigated divorce is $20,000 to $50,000
Yeah.
easily.
So in mediation, then, is there a flat fee or is there a fee that goes on and on and on with the duration of the case? How does mediation fees, how are they structured?
I think everybody does it a little differently, but how I do it is I offer a flat fee for the full mediation, from sitting down with them, gathering financial documents, coming up with marital settlement agreements, doing the parenting agreement, and helping them prepare the paperwork to finalize the divorce. I don't represent them. I just help them prepare the paperwork. So and it depends on how complicated the case is. But generally it runs from $7,000 to $10,000 at the most. And that also might include some experts that the parties might have to engage for things like pension evaluations or house appraisals, or the entry of qualified domestic relations orders to divide pensions. But then there's other options too. Sometimes people come and they say, we have an agreement, we just need you to draft it and help us process the divorce, prepare the agreement and help process the divorce. And that's obviously a much less flat fee. Then there's individual mediation sessions. Sometimes people come back and they say, well, we need to mediate this one session, and that's an hourly fee. If they go beyond the scope of what my full program is, there could be additional fees for additional sessions. So it's not a one-stop shop, but it's a pretty predictable set of costs.
Yeah. And that's 7,000 to 10,000 that you mentioned up front. That's for the couple, not per individual. So the wife is paying that, and then the husband is paying that. It's for the couple. Yeah.
It's per couple. Yeah.
Yeah. And then depending on their situation, you have a price set for those differences in what they may need.
Correct.
Okay. One of the benefits that I'm hearing that I want everyone else to get of you being an attorney mediator is that not only can you facilitate the settlement, the agreement, what they agree upon in terms of their children and their estate, but then you can also do all the paperwork that's required as well, the legal paperwork that's required as well.
Exactly. I can take off my mediator hat, I can put on my lawyer hat, and I can be the scrivener, the person who drafts all of that paperwork. With someone who is not an attorney, they can only do what's called a memorandum of understanding. And then the parties have to take it to an attorney so that they can draft it and go through that process. Now, the thing I do also want to say is, even after I do prepare that marital settlement agreement, because it's a legal document, I always encourage the parties to take it to what I call a mediator-friendly attorney, an attorney that understands the mediation process, who will go through the agreement and make sure the parties really understand it, and maybe even tweak it a little bit to tighten it up if they feel is needed. And I will do all the revisions that are suggested or requested, as long as the parties agree upon them, because I want to make sure the parties understand what's all the legal ramifications in that marital settlement agreement, even though I read through it with them line by line after I draft it. I still encourage them, because it's a legal document, to be safeguarded, to have it reviewed by an attorney.
I get that. So let me ask you, we're coming to the end of our time together, but there's another question.
Already?
I tell you, I could talk to you all day. But the question that is going on in my head is, if I may play the devil's advocate for a second. Well, Lenore, this mediation stuff is for the high-powered executives who feel self-confident and empowered to come and work with you. That's for them, but not for someone like me, who has been, told what to do all of her life. My spouse is the one that told me what to do and how to do it. She was, in charge of all the money. I mean, this doesn't seem like it's something for me, although I would love for us to come up with an agreement together and not go to court.
I don't think that's true at all. In fact, I think this is an opportunity for that spouse to feel empowered. And my job as the mediator, facilitating the neutral conversation, is to make sure that the power between the parties is balanced. So I always encourage the couples coming to me to get the support that they need through the process. If they don't know anything about the finances, I suggest that they talk with a certified divorce financial analyst to help them digest the finances. If they need the emotional support, I suggest that they get into therapy and have somebody help them process the dynamics. And then, if they feel that they need an understanding outside of the mediation process of what their legal rights might be, I suggest that they consult with an attorney. Not that they're represented by an attorney, but they consult with an attorney who can explain to them, well, if you didn't do this, what you might expect in court. So they know what their options are. I make sure that each spouse has all the information that they need and have the support that they need to make decisions that are not only in the best interest of the family, but also in their best interest as well. And I make sure that nobody, overpowers the other person. And if in the initial consultation, I get the sense that there's just too big of an imbalance of power there, I might suggest that maybe they consider collaborative law, where, again, they might have a legal representative to balance out the other spouse.
Got it.
In terms of the Peacemakers Project, I came up with that because a few years ago I went to the International Association of Collaborative Professionals conference in Philadelphia. And I heard an attorney, David Hoffman, speak, and he talked about lawyers as peacemakers. And I just thought my head was going to explode because I never heard anybody use those two words together. So I have come to know many other lawyers that seek to be peacemakers. And I have decided that I'd like to promote that more, especially in these days and times. Yeah. So I'm starting what I call the Peacemakers Project. I'd like to interview people that are lawyers that are peacemakers or other people that are peacemakers and try and give them, um, illuminate them to the world so that more people embrace that goal, that desire to be peacemakers.
And so is this going to be something on Facebook? You said interviews. So are you going to podcast this? Are you going to put it on your website? Where can one participate in the Peacemakers Project?
My vision is to start with Facebook podcasts and see where it goes from there. This is in the germination stage, but that is what I'd like to do. I'd like to promote lawyers as peacemakers or peacemakers in general.
Well, to conclude our wonderful interview together, I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to speak directly to the wife, to the husband, to the couple who are contemplating divorce, or even those who are already starting a litigious experience together. What would you want to say directly to these couples?
What I'd want to say to them is, I know you're in a lot of pain right now. But if you come to me, I can help bring peace to this process. Just give peace a chance. You might be really glad that you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lenore Myers, attorney mediator, Lenore Myers. This has been really wonderful. Every time I talk to you, not only do I feel uplifted, but I learn something. I learn something new, and I am well beyond divorce. It's been 8 years for me this year, but I learned something new. And every time I wish I had done this process than the other ways that we went about it. I think even my family would have healed a lot sooner and a lot better. The scar that's there wouldn't be so obvious. It's a scar, yeah, but it wouldn't be so obvious. So
yeah, and that's what I hope to help other people do.
So thank you. And we can't wait to look you up and follow what you're doing. And so I want everyone to feel welcome to look up Lenore's website. Again, her website that we're going to definitely post. Lenore, tell us one more time what your website is, and also that we can reach you on your by your phone number. Just your website one more time.
Divorce Done Differently, PA.com.
All right. Thanks so much, Lenore, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.